Well, hello again. I hope you guys are enjoying the reunion. Again, I wish I was there with you. I hope you enjoyed the videos that I sent so far. I thought I would give you one more installment. I don't know if you have time to play it or not. This is really where it gets interesting for me. And so I hope you have a chance to check this out. But the Mustian Journey, Part 3, I'm calling it. And this is the Muschampe family. Now, this is where I believe that we came from, actually, and where the Mustian name got started. And so at the end of the first video, I kind of alluded to the fact that Mustians have been involved in, being barons and lords and associated with royalty and those kind of things over in England. And so, again, that video talked about how I think we're more from England than we are Armenia. And so as I was, researching all this stuff, when I started really looking into it in an online search venue, I started to find all these Mustian names over in England. And just hundreds of them, hundreds of names going back all the way to the 1200s time frame, and even before that. And so I started realizing that we were really a British family, and then all within a space of about an hour, I realized that we were actually from France. But we came over in the invasion of England in 1066, in the invasion of England, the Normandy invasion. And so what I wanted to kind of point out was our connection to this family, the Muschampe or Muschampe family. And of course, if you say Muschampe in English, it sounds very different from Mustian in the way we say Mustian in America. But if you say it in a kind of a French way, Muschampe, you kind of see the connection with Mustian. And what happened was, after the Muschampe family came over from France into England, and then the English language started to be established, and the spellings were all Anglicanized, is what they say. All the French names were Anglicanized to sound more English, and to make it easier for English-speaking people to pronounce them. They changed it from Muschampe or Muschampe to Mustian. And what you find as you search is all these different variant names, spellings, of the name Mustian and Muschampe. And so I wanted to show you a little bit of that, just to give you an idea what I'm talking about here. One of the things I think you find is so fascinating to me is to find our name, Mustian, in Old English writing in a very, very old book. And you can find that many places in online search archives and different things. Birth dates were written down this way. Marriage licenses were written in books like this. And so if you go back, you can see our name, and you see that S. It kind of looks like an F, but that's the way they used to write the S back in the day. And so it's so fascinating to see our name in an old book like that. And so one of the things, as you're searching for these, you can see in this document right here the name Muschampe and Mustian and Mustians, and all different spellings of the name are represented in this one document on the back of this page here. And you can find these documents really, I wouldn't say hundreds of these documents online, but tens of documents, definitely. But you see these different spellings: Mustians, Mustains, Muschampe, Muschampe, or however you want to say that, Muschampe. But again, these are all the same name, but they're spelled kind of how you say it. And this is all happening before they refined the English language and refined the spelling conventions that we know today. And it was very common. You see the name Mustians down at the bottom, and that's a holdover from the Muschampe time frame. But it's interesting to note that William Shakespeare's name was spelled with 25 different variations. Again, this is kind of the golden era of the English language coming into existence, and the spellings were just very different. You can see it again here on this one, just a lot of different ways to spell Mustian. But what you find, and these are kind of the ways you see it spelled in America, Mustian. Again, it's the way somebody pronounces it, and that's the way they write it down. And so I don't know how many times I've had name tags made, or my name spelled Mustaine, or all these different types of ways that they spell our name. You know how it gets butchered, the way that people pronounce and spell our name. It was no different back then. But I played this in that last video, this quote from King Henry VIII, by the grace of God, King of England, and all that stuff. But at the bottom there, he says, "To our trusty and well-beloved servant, Edward Mustian's greetings." And the reason he's writing this to Edward Mustian's is because Edward Mustian's, or Edward Muschampe, and we'll show the connection between the two names, was a feudal lord who basically served under the king. He was a baron, and that means he was a landholder and a landowner of land that belonged to the King of England. And so he's providing for the king through that land and all the people that are working on that land for him. And so, as long as I've been studying this stuff, I've found that I've had to do a lot of education on my own to figure out what's going on here. And this is a very simple diagram of feudalism, European feudalism, from the 900s to the 1500s time frame. And this is where our family, the only reason that we know anything about our family this far back is because our family, the Muschampe family who became the Mustian family, were barons and knights under this feudalistic system. The king at the top, and then we're a little bit lower than the king as barons, landowners, or fiefdoms as they called them, and then the knights who protected those fiefdoms, and then the villagers or the serfs at the bottom there who do all the work and don't get much glory out of it. The pilgrims, the poor people is essentially who they are, who provide food and services to the knights and to the kings and to everybody else above them. And then the barons or the knights provide protection and military service to the barons and the kings, and then down the other side it goes. There you see. But this is, like it or not, this is kind of where our family came from. In a part 4, I'm going to talk about how we got there. But I just want to make the establishment of this connection between the Mustian family and the Muschampe family in this part 3, because it's quite an amazing connection. And I was just gobsmacked when I realized it. One day I was just sitting there researching online, and all of a sudden I recognized what was happening, and it shocked me. And I'm still shocked by it, and 5 years later. Just this connection that we have with this ancient medieval family is fascinating to me. And so how do we know that for sure? Well, one of the most prominent places that the Muschampe family was a lord over was a place called Barmore or Barrymore up in Northumberland. Now that is the furthest part north in the United Kingdom, or actually in England, and then it's right on the Scottish border. And so that area, Northumberland, was in constant battles back and forth with the Scottish people. And the landowner, or the barons there at Barmore Castle in Northumberland, were charged with holding the line and not allowing the Scottish to come down and take over. And over the hundreds of years of time, sometimes the Muschampe family gave in to the Scottish and were on their side, and sometimes they were back on the English side. Well, usually in the height of this connection that we have here with the King of England is in this time frame of 1500 time frame, right at the end of that feudal time frame. Well, Baron Muschampe of Northumberland, but in this document you see here, the Lairds and Gentlemen, a study of the landed families of the eastern Anglo-Scottish borders. They write that sometimes Muschampe is spelled Mustians. And that is the connection, and you can find that connection in, again, I won't say hundreds of places in documents online, but tens of 20s or 30s of places. You can find these documents where the name Mustian. So again, you find all these documents that have the names Muschampe and Mustian tied together. Sometimes it'll say something like this, sometimes spelled Mustians, or it'll say or Mustians. Sometimes the name Mustian will be on top, and it'll say also known as Muschampe, or alias Muschampe, or something along those lines, but they make this connection. And these are very official documents or studies or historical findings. The peerage of England has that connection as well. And it calls him a chief and a knight, or in chief and knight service of the barony of Muschampe. And so, the idea of being a chief or a baron there, and also in knight service, in that idea of protecting that Scottish border. And I'm not going to bring it out in this portion, but there are stories of battles that happened and murders that took place. And there's one story of two Mustians who were involved in a murder and these kind of things. And I'll put all that in the documentary when I put that together. But it's just fascinating stuff. And again, it's a lot of documents that you find out there. Mustian is another one of these frequently misspelled pronunciations or frequently spelled names of Mustian, but against the same person. We know that because in a different document they'll be talking about the same guy and they'll spell it Mustian or Muschampe or vice versa. But this guy, John Mustian, born at Ingwin, and that's Belgium, which was Flemish then, is recorded as King Henry VIII, an arras maker. Now, an arras maker, this is also a very fascinating aspect of this study. An arras is a tapestry. King Henry was known as the king who had more royal tapestries commissioned and made and held in his various castles and palaces than any other king in history. And they're priceless today. If you can find one, they're absolutely priceless. And so this guy, John Mustian, he was making those. And it's interesting that he's from Belgium. And I'll get more into that whole thing about how famous those tapestries were and the fact that they brought them. But most likely that's one of the reasons that the Mustian family or Mustian family became so famous at the time of King Henry VIII, because they were, very intimately involved with decorating his palaces at the time, and they became very wealthy as a result of that. Another document that you can find here talks about a warrant that was issued from the park keepers, to send a fat buck of this season to George Mustian, Esquire, Sheriff of Northumberland. And so in the years after the barony kind of ended, the Mustian family, or the Muschampe family, they remained in a place of authority even after the years of the feudalistic system went away. Some of them did. Some of them just went into finance, and they were gold brokers and different things like that, and banking different things around London. But you see there that George Mustian, and there's a lot of documents that talk about him as the Sheriff of Northumberland. Another document points out, again, this connection, the Mustians, also known, or in parentheses, Edward Mustians, the guy that King Henry was talking about. These are the letters and papers of King Henry himself, and he puts down that Muschampe, also known as Mustians. Another document below that, Richard Mustians, i.e. Muschampes. Okay, so there's the occasion where they're flipped. I.e. is kind of the idea of, in other words, Muschampes. He was a knight. He was the Lord of Chillingham in 1242. The first time I saw this document, it was written in Latin. And it said Ricardo di Muschampe, or something along those lines. It was fascinating to break that down and to see that old document in 1242 written about one of our family members so long ago. And so, again, these are very fascinating things to me. I don't know if they are interesting to anyone else. But here's another one, a man of the uncommon name. And we do have a very uncommon name, right? I've asked people in England, when I run into somebody from England, I would say, hey, have you ever heard the name Mustian? And they're like, no, absolutely not. And so it's an uncommon name in America. It's an uncommon name in England. It's probably an uncommon name in France and Belgium as well. But we know that it's uncommon. But he was a senior church warden of St. Giles, 1650. And so there's a lot of church involvement. There are a lot of bishops and priests who were named Mustian down through the line, and I'm a pastor myself, so that's very interesting to me that there are so many who are in the ministry in some form or shape or form, usually in a Catholic sense, but some of them Church of England. And of course in America there are a lot of Mustians that have been in the ministry as well. And so London Citizen 1651. Here's an interesting one. There was some kind of legal battle between a Sir Thomas Muschampe in London who had obstructed a lane, and there was a suit from the Merchant Tailors Company against Sir Thomas Muschampe. And so, you know, again, these are the kinds of things you find if you just type in the name Muschampe or Mustian or both of those together, and maybe London or Buckingham or different names that the Muschampe family is connected with. You find these documents that come up, and they're very fascinating. Here's another account of the same exact thing, but again, they flipped the name. And so here it says the Merchant Tailors versus Mustian, also, or alias, Muschampe. Again, a spelling error there with the Muschampe family, who was a knight for stopping a footpath. Same incident, same story, but in a different archive, and we find that Mustian is on top, Muschampe is on the bottom. And so that's why you find these connections between the two names and the two families. A book was written, The Bellman of London, in 1608 by Thomas Dekker, and he dedicated it to Master Francis Mustian of Peckham. We have no idea who Francis Mustian is of Peckham, but we know that there was a very famous family in the Peckham area, which is kind of southeast of London, and they owned a large estate. And so we don't know if he was from a family that came up or came down from Northumberland after the feudal system had ended. There's a lot of things that are lost in this. It seems when the family Muschampe came over in the invasion of 1066, the Mustian family, or the Muschampe family, took part in taking over a lot of land in England in different places. And so you'll find the names all over the country where they had taken over land that was owned previously by the Anglo-Saxons. And now that the Normans have invaded, the Norman invasion, they have taken over now, and their barons are going to own those pieces of land now rather than the Anglo-Saxon lords. And so that's what you see happening. And so we don't know if this guy, Francis Mustian, was from one of these barons that were down in the south of England, or if he was from a family that was up north, and as the feudalistic system went away, they just kind of migrated south and became rich through finance or something along those lines. A lot of that has been lost. I'm still researching that and trying to put things together, and I'll talk a little bit about that in part 4. But that's a part of it. So he must have been of some note, because somebody dedicated a book to him and called him Master. Here's an interesting one as well. 1549, list of gentlemen in the county of Northumberland. Edward Muschampe, and again, parentheses, Mustian. They want you to know Edward Muschampe is also known as Edward Mustian. And so you see that there. Here's kind of the final blow that gives you the understanding that Muschampe was the French name, and then it says Mustian, or Muschampe, or Mustian, according to the peerage. Now again, the peerage of England is the hierarchy from the king down, all of the official designations. This guy is a lord, this guy is a knight, this family's in charge of this land, and here's their family tree. Here's this family over here that have been placed in charge of this land. Here's their name and how to pronounce their name, all those kind of things. But again, it's trying to say, you know, the French name Muschampe is now Anglicanized to a more English-friendly name, Mustian. And so the Peerage of England is a very, very important document, and it says in no uncertain terms that Mustian and Muschampe are the same family. It's just an Anglicanized version of Muschampe. One of the fascinating things that you find is that there is still today, just a stone's throw away from Buckingham Palace, is the Eton College, where all of the sons of the Prime Minister and lords of the House of Commons and everything, that's where their sons go. It's a boys' school. I think girls are allowed to come now, but one of the dormitory houses at Eton College, again, just a stone's throw across the river from Buckingham Palace, is this college that has a dormitory called Mustian's house. That's the name of the house. And if you do a little research about that, you find that there was a farm there owned by the family Mustians. And Mustian's farm, you see in this document in the National Archives of the UK, there was a lease and subsequent sale of part of that farm to Eton College so that they could build their dormitories for Eton College. And on that piece of ground, there's still a house dormitory that was built there in 1965 called Mustian's house. Now, if you call over there, and I have, and ask them, who is this house named after? Nobody knows. There is a hotel, kind of bed and breakfast type place in a place called Slough, which is northeast of London. There's a room in that ancient hotel called Mustian's Room. And again, you call that hotel and ask them, who'd you name this room after? We have no idea. All of these things go back to the medieval times, where the Mustian family, the Muschampe family, was fairly well known. Again, right down the road from Buckingham Palace. Most likely the heiress maker family who's making all these tapestries and taking them back over to the palace. Here, King, what do you think of this tapestry? Is this good enough? And then hanging that tapestry up in his palace and all those kind of things. I have put two and two together, and I think that's what is happening here. And then that family was wealthy and famous until, again, the feudal system went away. And you know how politics works. At one time you're in with the big dogs, and then things change and seasons change, and now you're out. And it would appear that the Muschampe family fell on hard times, and they lost their fortunes eventually. And it could be, I don't know this for sure, this is still a link I'm trying to make, but it could be that the Mustian family decided, well, we don't want to be associated with the feudalistic system any longer, the Muschampes and all that. We don't want to be associated with that stuff anymore. We'll just call ourselves Mustian from here on out. And so I think that's what has happened. And so it would seem that there are still Muschampes over there, and there are still Mustians over there. But it appears that the Mustians are the more blue-collar kind of folks, and the Muschampes are the more, uppity folks in the society. But don't know that for sure. Interesting though, Geoffrey de Muschampe was the medieval bishop of Coventry and Lichfield from 1198 to 1208 when he died. And so way back at the beginning of the Norman invasion, takeover, and resettlement of the baronhoods and the leadership of the Norman takeover. Not too long after that, we see one of the Muschampes rising up into the barons and lords of the church, or the bishops of the church, were kind of at a level playing field. They were about the same as far as authority within that peerage. And so this guy Muschampe, Geoffrey Muschampe, was the bishop of Coventry. Now you can see some of the old parts of the cathedral there. I have a ton more of this stuff, but I'm going to save a lot of it for the film that I'm doing eventually. But I hope you've enjoyed it. And in part 4, again, we're going to talk about the connection with the William the Conqueror, who was the guy who came over in the Northern invasion, or the Norman invasion, and conquered England, and the Muschampe family and their connection with that family and that whole thing. And then even going back further, I'm hoping to make some more connections and maybe find out where we came from. I think that it's fairly clear that Muschampe maybe lived in, the Muschampe family perhaps lived in Normandy, France for maybe a couple of hundred years, but they originally came from Belgium, which was Flanders earlier than it was named Belgium. And so I don't know if they were there for hundreds of years before that, or if that was just a temporary stopping place. But again, this area of Flanders where they came from, England, is where they produced a lot of the textiles and a lot of the means of producing these tapestries that ended up in the king's palaces. And they're still known for that to some degree today. And so where they were at before then, I don't know. Is there a Jewish connection? Is there a Roman connection? I'm not really sure. And people ask me, are you, where are you from? Are you French, or are you British, or what? And I say, yeah, both. It seems like, yeah, we came over from England, but before that, 500 years before that or so, it seems like we came over in the Norman invasion from France. And then, a couple hundred years before that, it seems like we came from Flanders or Belgium. So I'll let you know about that as I get some more information about that. Probably won't have time to do a part 4 right now, but again, wish I was there with you guys. Wish I could meet you all, but enjoy the videos, and we'll talk to you later.